So we briefly talked about parameters and how they're the key to remembering the movements that we want our VTuber model to make. Think of parameters like a light switch. There's an off mode and an on mode. When the switch is set to off, the light is off. When the switch is set to on, the light turns on. A parameter does exactly that, but instead of off or on, it's a set number value. So maybe values 0 and 1. And instead of turning off and on a light, maybe this parameter tells the program to open and close our eyes. So value 0 has our eye layers deformed to look closed, and value 1 has our eye layers deformed to look open. It's exactly like the light switch, but instead it's just telling the program to deform our art and save it at that specific value. Now the parameter we just described would actually be named eye open, and it would only be linked to the deformers and the art meshes that are needed to make the eye open and close. Every single part of the model has its own parameter. Like I mentioned in a previous lesson, angle X would be the parameter that moves the head in the X axis. Parameter angle Y, on the other hand, would move the head in the Y axis. Brow LY would move the eyebrow in the y-axis, and mouth open would open and close the mouth, and so on and so forth. The tracking program uses these parameters as its guide to know what your face is doing in real time. So if you close your eyes, the camera would see that and set the eye open parameter to value 0, which would make your model close its eyes. If you opened your eyes, the camera would see that, set the value to 1, and again the model's eyes would then open. So now we know there's a parameter for every tracking movement, but how do we set these parameters to remember our deformations? We will add something called keyforms to our parameters, and these are the little green dots that save the deformer's position to a parameter value. At the top of our parameter window, we have these buttons. With a parameter and a layer selected, we can press the first button to add 2 green dots that will appear on our parameter. You can click along the line to change the value of the parameter, which you can see in the box to the right, or you can right-click near a key to snap to its exact value. You can only ever edit a key if you're snapped to its exact value. So IL open, the parameter to open and close our left eye, has 2 keyform values, 0 for closed and 1 for open, just like our example. The Live2D website has a standard parameter list which gives you a guide on which parameters have what values and what those values should do. This is because programs like VTuber Studio read those default values for tracking, and you need to make sure that the deformations that you make align with those values. Again, here in the VTuber workshop, we're going to explain exactly everything you need to do for each parameter and its value, so don't worry. We'll make it as easy as possible for you to understand. This brings us to creating new parameters, which you can do by pressing the plus button at the bottom of the parameter window. A window will appear to create a new parameter. It needs a name, an ID, and set value ranges. Like deformers, we name the parameter based on what they move. For the ID, it's what programs like VTuber Studio use in order to know what parameter should be moving. If we look back to Live2D's parameter guide, we can see that angle X has an ID of param angle X, and values -30, 0, and 30. If we look into VTuber Studio, we can see the same thing. Up here on input, we see face angle X. This is what your camera is tracking, your actual face looking left or right. Then in output, we see our parameter's ID, param angle X. So the software is tracking your face's movement left and right and linking it to parameter angle X. We, as the VTuber artists, rig the model so that it looks left and right for that parameter. So in summary, the entire process is tracking the movement with your camera, linking that movement to a parameter, and then rigging the exact same movement onto your model. The specific ranges and values, like angle X being -30 and 30, is only important when it comes to physics, and Live2D will automatically set those ranges for you. We'll worry about physics later, so for now if you're unsure, just check the standard parameter list. Now, like you might have seen with angle X, it actually has 3 values, and this can be done with a second button that has 3 points. We'll select our head deformer and our parameter angle X, and then we'll press the Add 3 Keys button. This is because we have 3 states for our VTuber head: looking left, looking straight forward, or looking right. So unlike the eye having only open and close, we need 3 keys for our model's head. This also means that you can add more than 3 keys to a parameter, and you can do that by clicking on the parameter and pressing the Add Single Keyform button in the window that pops up to the right. But we usually don't do this because Live2D already calculates the movements of 2 art pieces between 2 keyforms. So as we shift parameter X from value 0 to 30, we can see that Live2D determines how the art should look at any value in between. The only time we should add more points is if we wanted the art to move differently between our initial movements. For beginner rigging, you won't have to do this because adding more points means you need to rig more deformations for each keyform. And trust me, keeping things simple will make your model look good and move consistently. So take a moment and go over all that information again if you need, because we're about to add one more thing that can get a little confusing if you don't understand the basics. You can add multiple parameters to a deformer or art mesh, and the deformer can be affected by both parameters at the same time. So our deformer head XY would actually be keyed to both parameters angle X and angle Y. And this is because we want our head to be able to look left, right, up, and down. The complicated part is when we want to move both parameters at the same time. Luckily, Live2D does have a nice feature to let you see exactly what's happening, and we can enable that by clicking this little link icon on the upper parameter of the two you want to link. Now you can see instead of 3 keyforms for each parameter, you have 9 keyforms across the two. And that's because we now have 9 different positions that this deformer could be in. We could have angle X30 and Y0 to make the head look right, or angle X0 and Y -30 to make the head look down, or a combination of the two with angle X30 and Y30 to make the head look right and up. It's why I said we'd only use 2 or 3 keyforms per parameter, because having multiple parameters already makes it more complicated. Now, I hope you're following along because it kind of gets worse. You could add 3 parameters to the same deformer, but we won't be doing it for beginner rigging. We'll keep things as easy as possible for you to finish your model. Just know that it's possible, but 3 parameters and 3 values each would mean 27 different keyforms you would need to rig this deformer on. So yeah, don't do that. And yes, for those of you curious, you can actually add more than 3 parameters to one deformer if you wanted, but Live2D will give you a warning if you try to exceed more than 3. Now, there is some good news. There's another type of parameter called a Blendshape, and this one helps us make rigging easier. It automatically computes the different variations created with multiple parameters. So let's say we have something moving left, right on one parameter and up and down on the other, kind of like our head. Normal parameters would require us to rig those corner angles, but the Blendshapes would automatically do that for us. Now, Blendshapes are only really used for physics parameters because the corner angles like the ones on the face are too complex for Blendshapes to get right. There's too many detailed parts, and if you tried, you'd usually end up with some weird looking head angles. So for head angles, we'll use regular parameters so we can control how the corners look, but for stuff like breast physics, we can let the program compute those angles for us. It's a great feature and something we'll explore in more depth later on. So we did it. We learned about all the core basics you need in order to rig your model. You could technically go and do it now, but it would probably take you forever. So next lesson, we're going to learn about deformer hierarchies so that you can organize and move your parts together, making your work a lot easier. As always, keep up the great work, you're learning a lot, and I'll see you in the next lesson.